So, welcome back to part three. I'm so glad you're still here. Did you know that we have a right to fall in Georgia? Yep, I learned this from the hard way. Many skilled care, assisted living, and rehab facilities will not allow a client to use long bed rails or bed alarms, even for their own protection. This became a pain point for our family the last few months of Dad's care before he passed away. He would be in rehab or assisted living. He would decide he was strong enough not to call for someone to help him get up, and he would try to get up to use the bathroom or get dressed on his own. He'd get out of bed and down he'd go, smack on the floor. Back to the hospital we went. Another ambulance ride, another call, and back to ground zero on rehab once he was stitched up. This was the cycle and the pattern because we didn't have bed rails. But I'll share more about that later as we're talking about this. Welcome back to Before the Storm, part three in a series I created for leaders who are struggling with managing care for others, especially those of us caught in the squeeze between work, our own family, community, and caring for other people. So far, we've talked about a number of topics in the first videos, from the living medical list to the master files document and password managers. We discussed setting up a family email, portal updates, auto pay, banking relationships. You even got a glimpse into our new family pet, a feral cat named Pretty Girl. Funny story, we tried not to give her a name in case we had to place her with another family, and that affectionate adjective just stuck. So Pretty Girl is her name. I still see her on camera on and off, always playing and catching toys, and yelling at the squirrels through the window. I'm not actually sure what she would do if she ever caught one of the squirrels. Some of them are bigger than she is, but I digress. We also talked about using tools like a GPS pendant, Vial of Life, a key lockbox for those living alone. The next topic in the series is a bit more challenging. It's not about setting up logistics and technology. It's about the decisions and the conversations that we need to have. Now, here's something I wish someone had told me much earlier. Research your options before you need them. When you're in the middle of a crisis, you don't have time to Google best assisted living near me or what's the difference between hospice and palliative care. You need to know this stuff ahead of time. So while things are calm, do some homework. Drive by the assisted living facilities in your area. Look up the home health agencies and find out what rehab centers your parents' insurance will actually cover. Ask friends who've been through this, where do they take their family members? And here's a small one that made a really big difference for us. Bed rails. As I mentioned earlier, my dad kept trying to get out of bed on his own, which was a fall risk. We needed bed rails, and we were told we could use them in assisted living until we got there. Then we found out that in Georgia, we have a right to fall, which means many facilities will only allow one little bed rail. For my dad, we needed full bed rails and a bed alarm. Every time he felt better, he would get out of bed, hit the tile, and back to the ER we went. We ended up paying for both assisted living costs and full-time sitters to keep him in bed, which basically doubled our out-of-pocket for every week that he was there. The time to find this out is now, not when you're exhausted and desperate. Plus, many of these facilities actually have a wait list, so you want to get on it now and figure out what that looks like. So let me tell you another story, and this one is an important one. 2 weeks into my dad's third hospital stay since that March 27th phone call we talked about in video one, I'm standing in the hallway at the hospital. A social worker is asking us, what would Dad want? Would he want to go back to rehab? Would he want to keep fighting? Would he want to go into hospice? And I'm standing there with my phone in one hand, talking to my mom, a cold cup of coffee in the other one, no document, no conversation to reference, no clear answer. We're just a family who loves their husband and father, talking about a tired gentleman who didn't care what was decided anymore. Just broken hearts and a social worker trying to help us figure it all out. We had the medical directives and the power of attorney in place, but we never once had conversations to ask him what he actually would want around medical treatment. So we guessed. We made decisions in that hallway that I still think about today. We did our best, but my mom still beats herself up because we didn't have good understanding of what we were actually deciding. We chose to engage hospice, and we brought them into the assisted living facility where he already had a bed. A doctor friend had tried to warn us about the complications of mixing hospice with assisted living staff, but we didn't really understand because we were making the choice without a lot to go on. We weren't neglectful. We just thought a crisis would announce itself politely, give us a few weeks or months to prepare. But it doesn't work that way. The crisis comes when you're in Roswell and your dad's in Carrollton. It comes when you're juggling work and community and your own life. It comes on a random Tuesday when you haven't slept well and your coffee's gone cold. I can't give you back the conversation that we never had with my dad, but I can tell you this. The systems we built, I am so glad we built them because dealing with just the hospital was more than enough for any of us. If we'd had to simultaneously figure out whether the water bill was paid and how to access emergency funds for sitters in nursing facilities, it would have been complete chaos. The systems handled logistics, which meant we could focus on dad. So here's the fourth bullet. Have the conversations before you need them. And make sure those conversations include more than questions about whether you want food and liquid or whether you want to be on a ventilator. I mean, that's the stuff that we talked about, but that was it. We have now had some of these same conversations with mom. And though we can't plan for every scenario, we do know she has no desire to endure long hospital stays just to get a few more months out of her life. These conversations truly suck. They do. They are so challenging, but they make all the difference in the world when you need to make a decision. They can't reduce your grief, but they can reduce your regret. Think about that. They can reduce your regret. And while we're on the topic, the other conversation to have as soon as possible is around final wishes. I can't tell you how many leaders that I've coached who struggle with this. Clarity is kindness, but avoidance is human nature, for sure. One thing we did years ago, which was a huge lifesaver, was to have a whole family conversation around funeral plans for all of us. It wasn't just about mom and dad, because no one ever knows who is going to go first. So after some real effort to get us together, we got the family together sitting outside at a table with drinks and apps, and we went around the table discussing what each person wanted for final arrangements in great detail. We actually realized we all wanted to be cremated, which frankly shocked us. We discovered we all wanted a celebration of life with food and an open bar instead of visitation in a funeral home with everyone lined up for days. We talked about the ways we could make the service more interesting and who might speak or be pallbearers for each of us. For mom, it's all about the music. We also talked about what to do with the ashes. We have both a horse and a cat graveyard in our family, so those were options. Or do you want to be put in a coral reef or a tree? And we laughed. We laughed and laughed and laughed during this conversation, just picturing some of the crazy things that we could do. But by having this conversation about everyone and not just the oldest members of the family, we had a fun, open dialogue. I still recall it to this day, and we executed on that vision for Dad. We had a service in his church with military honors. I started my eulogy notes 2 years prior to his passing. Of course, I had to condense and change a lot of my comments in the last week, but I had a working draft when I needed it and when I really needed space. We had a reception in his honor, complete with Dewar's 12 Scotch and Snickers bars. The pastor was afraid we were going to put Dad's stuffed baboon in the choir loft in the church, but we decided the reception was a better place for him. His name is Colgate because of the yellow teeth, and he came back from Ethiopia with Dad in the 1960s after military service. And much to my sister-in-law's chagrin, he still camps out in my brother's garage. So in the end, that conversation on a Saturday afternoon for funeral plans was a lifesaver from anxiety and decision-making at a time when we were in grief and didn't want to make any decisions at all. In times of crisis and conversation, I have a few mantras that I try to live by. And you can use these as well as you're thinking about how to have some of these conversations. Because they don't just apply to my leaders that I work with, they also apply to every conversation and every interaction that we have. So the first is just remember, clarity is kindness. The more clear you are with others on your wishes, the easier it makes their life to help and support you. Even clarity around things like how to get into passwords and portals makes all the difference in the world. The second is all conflict comes from misaligned expectations. My husband Dwight told me this on our very first date, and I have used it ever since because it's true. I mean, think about it. Most conflict in work and in families is because we have different views on how something is supposed to be or what we think or what should be happening. Conflict is rarely as clear cut as it seems to be. Start with figuring out what expectations are out of alignment in the discussions, what fears are at work, what underlying belief systems are in the way for ourselves and for others. And when you can, do the third thing, which is assume positive intentions. In our conversations, it opens the door for solving issues instead of blaming people. Just remember there are 8 billion unique lenses on the world. Every person has a slightly different view of what's happening around them. It's like being in an optometrist office with all these different frames and prescriptions, all in combination. Everyone is unique. Stop to put someone else's lenses on and consider how they might see something differently from you. And then assume they're doing the very best they can and they're doing what they believe is the right thing at the time. Also, remember the misalignment is rarely about us, which is a whole different training topic, but I digress. Finally, my favorite is lead with curiosity. You don't need to have all the answers. Just start asking honest, non judgmental questions and see where it goes. Being open to hearing new perspectives will make all the difference in the world, and it might even change yours. So, keeping these principles in mind and then having this or other challenging conversations will really make a huge, huge difference. So, let's land this plane. Here's what we've covered. First, get your information organized. That living medical list, that master documents file, originals and digitals, the password vault. These 3 things alone will save you hours of frantic searching in the worst moments of your life. Second, automate your logistics. Family email, autopay, paperless, account monitoring software, USPS informed delivery, a relationship with the bank manager. Third, medical and physical support. Think about 2-way audio cameras, GPS pendants, vial of life lockbox, and there's a ton of other ideas in the checklist that I have available if you want one. Fourth, do your research now. Know your local options for assisted living, home health, and medical equipment before you need them. Set it up once and it runs while you're focused on the people you love. And finally, have the conversations before you need them, before the social worker is asking you in a hospital hallway what your parent would want, or the funeral director is asking about your plans. Open the door while the door is still easy to open. Now, I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine that phone rings, and instead of that cold wave of panic, I don't know where anything is. I don't have the passwords. I don't know what they'd want. You take a breath. Because you know where the insurance card is. You know the medication list is in the shared drive. You know the bills are on auto pay. You know what your parent actually wants or your loved one because you asked them. You can walk into that hospital and be the son, the daughter, the spouse, the child, not a frantic private investigator. You can hold their hand instead of holding a phone full of questions that you can't answer. You can grieve instead of Google. I know what you're carrying. The weight of watching someone you love get older and more frail is hard. The guilt of not being close enough, not knowing enough, not doing enough. The impossible math of your own life, plus their needs, plus work, plus your family, plus everything else. You're not failing. You're showing up for something hard, something most people don't even talk about until they're forced to. But you're here, learning, preparing, loving your family the best way you know how. And that matters. It really, truly does. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not 5 things, not a whole project, just one thing. In the next 48 hours, have one conversation. If you're the adult, call your parent or your loved one and just say, hey, I've been thinking, can we talk about what you'd want if something happens? That's it. You don't need all the answers. You just need to open the door. And if you're an aging parent, and I know some of you are, call your kids or whoever's going to be standing in that hallway someday and say, I want to make this easier for you. Let's talk. Now, your kids are going to assume you're dying. Reassure them, then have the conversation anyway. I have a handout that you can use that covers everything in these videos and more. It's not homework, it's not your external brain when your actual brain is too tired to function. Reach out to me if you would like it. Read it, download it, put it somewhere you'll actually use it. Because you don't have to figure out the whole journey today. You just have to take the first step while the road is clear. March 27 came for me, and someday your phone will ring too. But when it does, you can be ready instead of scrambling. I hope this was a helpful series. Again, my shameless plug. If I can be of service to you or anyone in your network, please pass them along. And if you have any questions about this topic, feel free to reach out. This was strictly my views and experience on this topic. I encourage you to do your own research, make your own choices. But for the first step, just start the conversation. You've got this. You have got this. It will make all the difference in the world, I promise. Thank you for being here. And feel free to share this with anybody else that this could help and be useful for. Have an amazing, amazing day. Take care.